Hi everyone. Today I have a classics book haul to show you. I always love filming classics book hauls because, as you know, I love classics and I also love buying books. So the two is just a lethal combination. But before we get into the book haul, before I show you some of the books that I have bought recently, I have some very exciting news to share with you. Something that I have been working on for quite a while now that I am just bursting to tell you about because I think it's so exciting and I think that you'll be very excited too. So as you may know, many years ago I founded the Classics community, which was an online bookish space but also a readathon, a read-along, a reading challenge that encouraged lots of you to either begin reading classics or to find a place that you could discuss the classics that you were reading. You've joined in, you've participated, you have shared the hashtag on social media tens of thousands of times. And now that I have finished my university degree, now that I have a little bit more time to dedicate to the things that I love, I am really excited to be relaunching the Classics community. What that means and what it will look like is that I will still be posting classics themed videos on my YouTube channel, but I'll also be supplementing this with more readathons and read-alongs, and I would love to start a classics community themed book club, but as it's something that I would like us all to shape together, that will come a little bit later down the line. But we also have a brand new home on the internet. I have started my very own Classics community Substack newsletter. So every week I will be sharing classics discussions, I will be sharing reviews of the books that I've been reading, which will be more detailed than the sort of wrap-ups that I do on YouTube, but still spoiler free, so you can enjoy them and hopefully pick up the books after you have read them. There will be lots of opportunity to participate. I'll be asking you to share what you have been reading, to share your recommendations. And so while I want to say that it will be business as usual, actually it won't, because I will be here a lot more now. Making classics accessible to everyone is so important to me, and I think that community and online spaces are one of the best ways to do that, to make people realise that there really is a classic for everyone. So I will leave the links to everything in the description where you can sign up, and I've got some exciting posts coming up. I've got the introduction, of course, that you will see if you go over and subscribe, but also I've got coming up my classics reading journey. I've got a review of The Sea by Iris Murdoch, one of my favourite books of the year so far. I'll also be asking you soon to share what you have been reading, and I'm just so looking forward to having another online space where I get to talk about the classics that I love, and I really hope that you will enjoy it just as much as I have enjoyed putting everything together so far. So all the links are in the description, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you soon. But now let's get into the book haul, and I've got some seriously beautiful books to show you. I've got some special editions, I've got some authors that I've really been getting into, and some editions that I've been really getting into collecting too. I'm really excited about all of these books, and I kind of just want to sit and start reading them all already. But there are also a few that I have already read, so let's talk about those. This year, Vintage Books have released some special edition Virginia Woolfs, and I'm a big fan of Virginia Woolf. As you may know, I love her books so much. I've read quite a few of them now, and I would love to do a separate video on all the Virginia Woolf books that I have already read, because I feel like I've read some of the big titles, and now I'm getting into some of the stuff that isn't loved quite as much. But Vintage published these editions that take the original covers of the books designed by Virginia's sister Vanessa Bell, which I adored. I loved the original cover so much. I love Vanessa Bell's art, and these are so in keeping with the original editions that people would have been able to buy when these were first published. So I have been collecting these slowly, and they also make amazing presents. So my present to self was Mrs. Dalloway, which is one of my favourite Virginia Woolf novels. I say that, but I kind of love them all. But Mrs. Dalloway was my first Virginia Woolf, and it was the book that really made me realise the spark in her writing, the way that you read it in one sitting and you kind of can't let go. There are no natural stopping places, so you've just got to keep going. And I loved that reading experience so much, and just thinking about Mrs. Dalloway reminds me of being like 16 or 17, reading it for the first time, and just knowing that I had found an author for life. So this, I think, is probably the most iconic Virginia Woolf cover. The end papers are in keeping with the original edition too. It's printed in such a way that is in keeping with how the book would have looked. Everything about it is just such a beautiful reading experience, and this started my obsession completely with these editions. So after that, as a present from my girlfriend for finishing university, I got A Room of One's Own. Again, I love this cover, and the end papers too are super beautiful, and it really was the perfect present that made me feel so seen and just was so in keeping with me as a person. I love A Room of One's Own because it is basically Virginia Woolf's essay on writing, on having a place to write, about women's space within the world of writing and books. And I again read this when I was like 17 maybe, and I remember having read Mrs. Dalloway, a work of fiction, finding something very different in Virginia Woolf's non-fiction that was still as beautiful, still as powerful, but the way that she writes, and I think her sort of thesis on life and what she's writing about, shines through in a very different way. And so I would recommend reading a piece of her fiction alongside her non-fiction too. And then my other present to yourself was To the Lighthouse, another edition that I just love. I can't choose a favourite, but this isn't a cover I've seen as much as Mrs. Dalloway. Mrs. Dalloway to me is the one that I kind of recognise as these first Hogarth Press editions, but I love this, and look at those end papers. Everything about it is so stunning. And To the Lighthouse is a book that when I first read it, I didn't think I was going to like it. I put it down for ages and ages, and then I read it last year, and I was just in the right frame of mind for it, the right place in my life, and I loved it so much. It's one of the most beautiful, touching explorations of grief that I have ever read and think I ever will read. It's a book that is incredibly poignant, and there are so many different side characters I think to fall in love with and to feel for, and we live in their heads, and it feels very intense and very beautiful, kind of like the push and pull of the tides. It's a book that I think will grow on me throughout my life, and those are the books that I love the most, that will mean something different to me every time that I read them. But I really do think objectively that it is one of the best books that's ever been written in the English language, and that's a very big statement, I know, but I do believe it in my heart and soul that this is one of the most groundbreaking pieces of literature that you will ever read. So I really am obsessed with all three of these. I'd love if they could make more. I'm not sure if they will, but I kind of want them all. I kind of want all of Virginia Woolf's books in these editions, and I'll make more room on my shelf. So if you're watching this, anyone from Vintage Books who makes these decisions, please make me more of these gorgeous special editions. They are stunning. More beautiful books now, but quite a departure from Virginia Woolf. I have been getting into Tove Jansson, and I have recently become a Moomin addict. It's a problem, I know, but I love the Moomins so much. So I read Tove Jansson's, some of her adult books. I read Fair Play. I've recently read Summer Book, which I loved. I'll talk about them in a separate video because I love them so much. They are a big part of my personality and who I am as a person now. They are like my latest obsession. But then I decided that I would read the Moomin books, and I started with The Moomins and the Great Flood, and I fell in love. The Moomins are these little characters, these little beings, and part of the reason that I love this book so much, the first one, The Moomins and the Great Flood, is that it was written in a post-war world and is about displacement and finding home after displacement. So it's one of those books that every time I go to talk about it, I kind of tear up because it's so beautiful and yet so fun, and reading it brought back this childhood nostalgia. Even though I never read the Moomins as a kid, it made me feel this childhood wonder and joy, something that I felt like I had been lacking in my life or been missing in my life for so long. Because I read a lot of Beatrix Potter when I was younger. I read Bramley Hedge, for example. I've always very much been into these sort of anthropomorphic animals who live these lives that feel very detailed and very them, this sort of world building. Reading this, I mean, this isn't a short book. It's a picture book with these beautiful illustrations where the Moomins kind of look very rustic compared to, I would say, like the cartoons and some of the merchandise that's coming out now that has sort of been redesigned. But I love that about it. These kind of very detailed but simplistic pen sketches. It felt like I had spent like a good few days with this book. It's about 70 pages, and the publisher Sort of Books have produced these beautiful anniversary editions that I love. This book is going to stay with me for a long time. It's one that I'm like, I want to tell every child to read the Moomins, and I think it would be such a wonderful thing to read to a child. There are such big, beautiful themes that are tackled wonderfully for tiny kids, but also that you get so much out of as an adult. The Moomins are kind of taking over my life. So I also bought Comet in Moominland, which is the second book, another beautiful edition from Sort of Books. I am now collecting these editions. And I also recently went to Toppings in Bath and found Finn Family Moomintroll, which is the second or third book in the series. So I now have the first, I have got the second that I'm going to be reading soon, and the third. So I'm going to go on a little Moomin reading journey, and I'm looking forward to taking you along with me. I'm obsessed with the Moomins at the moment, so much so that I went to Waterstones Piccadilly for Bookfest, and my stand that I was signing next to, my publisher stand, was right next to the Moomin House installment that is at Waterstones Piccadilly at the moment, and the only thing I wanted to do that day was have my photo taken with the Moomin House so I could feel like I was part of that, and it was wonderful. There was so much joy. It was such an experience. Would highly recommend. We need to talk about Penguin's new modern classics. They've been out for quite a few years, but they're releasing more of them. They've got these lovely blue spines, and I'm obsessed with them. I love the selection of books that are included in the series, so much so that I know when I walk into a bookshop now, these are the ones that I beeline for, because I'm so interested in all the books that are coming out on that range. And also they look so good on my bookshelf that they are kind of my go-to at the moment when I want a new book to read and know that I will love, but also that I know will look amazing on my bookshelf. This is half of them, and I've got another pile to show you. I've been going for groups of authors and also discovering new to me authors that aren't new to the world but are new to me. I've got a selection here of Clarice Lispector. So you've all been telling me for years and years to read Clarice Lispector. I have owned Hour of the Star for a long time, and I recently read that and I loved it enough that I was like, I kind of want to read everything that Clarice ever wrote. So that's what I've been trying to do. So I've got a nice selection here which starts with Agua Viva, which is the book that I'm currently reading. This has taken me quite a long time to read. I would say, I don't know how to describe Clarice Lispector to you, but I'm kind of seeing her in the vein of Virginia Woolf, where you have this stream of conscious narrative that is explaining very big thoughts. I would say that Clarice is sort of tackling very wide subjects. Like in this one, she's kind of talking about the meaning of life, the meaning of death, trying to summarize the experiences of both of those things. And so my brain aches every time that I read this. I think the reason why, I'm going to be honest, this has taken me so long to read is because there are many segues that lead back to cat placentas in this book, which isn't a sentence I ever thought I would be saying on BookTube, but I've never known an author to be so preoccupied, because she's talking about the meaning of life, with cat placentas. A very big metaphor, big extended metaphor in this book is cat placenta, and I'm not squeamish, but I kind of didn't want to think about cat placenta as much as I did, but still very great. I am having to take this one in like small doses. I find that's the way I read Clarice's books best, is to take them in small doses and then to put them together. I either have got to read them in one sitting, or I've got to read them over a number of weeks where I'm just dipping in and out so that I can digest everything that's going on in them. But after that, I've got some of these to read. So we have Near to the Wild Heart, we have An Apprenticeship or the Book of Pleasures, and I also have A Breath of Life. So if you've read any Clarice, I would love to know what you would recommend I read next, because I really am not sure. So this one, for example, Breath of Life, is Clarice's last published novel, written in agony, a mystical dialogue between a godlike author and the creation he breathes life into, which fascinates me as a writer. We also have An Apprenticeship or the Book of Pleasures, which is about Laurie, who yearns for love yet is scared of herself and of connecting with another human. And then Near to the Wild Heart is described as her prize-winning debut novel, published when she was 23, which earned her the name Hurricane Clarice. It tells the story of Joanna from her wild, creative childhood as the little egg who writes poems from her father, through her marriage to the faithless Ottavio, and on to her decision to make her own way day in the world. All books that really appealed to me in very different ways. I'm just not sure what to read next, but I am reading her very quickly. I've kind of always got a Clarice book on the go at the moment, so once I've read quite a few, I will talk about them, talk about the similarities and differences in the narrative and kind of how I'm getting on with her writing. But I'm really enjoying it. It's intense, it's a lot, can be kind of overwhelming at first, but I'm enjoying the experience, so I think that's the main thing. Last autumn I read Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh, and I loved it so much. It was one of my favourite books of 2024. I don't think I expected to love it as much as I did, but it's one of those books that I think will always stay with me because the reading experience, the time of year that I read it, the things that were happening to me in my life all came together and sort of collided in this story, and it's made me hungry to read more Evelyn Waugh soon, so I have acquired some. I am loving this thing of like when I discover an author then looking at what else they wrote, and I kind of don't mind if I've read like an Evelyn Waugh to then go out and buy some more because I know that I will read these soon, and I love owning them. I love being able to compare the books. I love being able to feel like I'm learning something about that author by looking at their entire backlist. So these are the Evelyn Waugh books that I would like to read soon, that I will be working my way through. So Brideshead Revisited primarily is a novel about class, also about religion, but I think those class elements in the book stand out the most. It's set in one of the universities, Oxford or Cambridge, I actually can't remember off the top of my head, and it's about the changing pre-war world that we know we will never be able to go back to, that is very much coming to an end. And so I was interested to read two of Evelyn Waugh's society novels, books that kind of deal with society at the time that he was writing, a society that he was very much a part of. And so I have Vile Bodies and I also have A Handful of Dust. Vile Bodies is a novel about the bright young things, the generation growing up after the First World War, while A Handful of Dust is also set during the interwar period and is about socialite affairs, and again I think this changing world that we will never be able to go back to. And then the other two I would like to read feel slightly different in tone again. They are Scoop and The Loved One. And Scoop is a comedy set in the world of journalism and newspapers, and The Loved One is quite possibly the book I am most excited to read at the moment because it sounds mad. It sounds like such a crazy ride. I feel like I've got to read it to you because I had never heard of this. I didn't know anything about it. I went into a bookshop, looked at the back and was like, I have to leave with it. So it's a book that is a dark and savage satire on the Anglo-American cultural divide, depicting a world where love, reputation and death cost a very great deal. It follows the death of a friend, poet and pet's mortician, Dennis Barlow, who finds himself entering into the artificial Hollywood paradise of the Whispering Glades Memorial Park. Within its golden gates, death, American style, is wrapped up and sold like a package holiday. And there, Dennis enters the fragile and bizarre world of Amy, the naive Californian corpse beautician, and Mr. Joyboy, the master of the embalmer's art. What do I say about that? But it sounds so fun, like darkly fun. Really looking forward to reading it. And then here is the other little pile. Well, I say little, it's not actually a little pile of books, but I'm so excited to read all of these too, apart from maybe the first one, which I don't know if I regret buying, but I got caught up in the book talk kind of booktube phase where this book was coming back around, and I'm just not sure if I'm going to enjoy it. I just don't know. See what you think. This first book is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Everybody has been talking about this book again. It just feels like it's having another moment in the book community zeitgeist, and I fell for it and I was like, I kind of want to read it and I want to know what it's like without knowing too much about it. But Of Mice and Men is probably my most hated book of all time. I studied it at school. I hate it. Even just the thought of it makes me mad. I think it's a terrible book. A really bad book that I don't understand why it's studied still so heavily in schools, particularly British schools. I kind of just think it needs to be stopped. That's my controversial opinion of the day. So why did I buy East of Eden? I'm not sure. I kind of feel like I'm gonna have to read it soon just to know if I like it or not, but I fell for a hype. This book has been out decades. Why did I fall for the hype now? I do not know. Who knows, maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe I will enjoy East of Eden? Wait and see. For a very long time, I have been meaning to read Lark Rise to Candleford by Flora Thompson. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for that sort of rural life, the rural custom that feels kind of familiar to me, having grown up in quite a rural landscape, but also feels quite nostalgic, very beautiful, and sort of an escapism, but that you know you're going to get some more hard-hitting themes in there too. Lark Rise to Candleford is based on Flora Thompson's own childhood. There was a very big adaptation that came out when I was a kid that I never watched. I was a Cranford child, not a Lark Rise to Candleford child, but I would love to watch it, and I thought, you know what? I would like to read the book first. And I had various editions that had been handed down to me but weren't the most readable, that I saw this and I thought, you know what, I think this is going to be the edition that will make me want to read this book. It has 3 of Flora Thompson's books in there, so they are Lark Rise, Over to Candleford and Candleford Green, but that are widely published now as Lark Rise to Candleford. I want to read some Thomas Hardy, who usually gives me that rural feel, but I kind of felt like maybe I would replace my Thomas Hardy reading this autumn by reading this and I would get that same feeling, so we'll see, but I'm really looking forward to reading it. I also got this sort of Sixth Sense feeling recently that I needed to read something by Sylvia Townsend Warner, whose most famous book I think is Lolly Willows, and I didn't really know anything about this, but I knew bits and pieces about Sylvia Townsend Warner that I sought her out and then read the back of this and was like, I just know that I'm gonna love this. It's about Lolly Willows, so gentle and accommodating, who has depths no one suspects. When she suddenly announces that she's leaving London and moving alone to the depths of the countryside, her overbearing relatives are horrified. But Lolly has a greater, far darker calling than family: witchcraft. I'm obsessed with that description, and it kind of feels like the perfect autumn read too. Very into my like rural escapism at the moment, and I think this one will be a lot of fun. Onto a book that I definitely don't think will be as fun. In fact, I'm expecting tragedy. I'm expecting an unhappy ending, which I don't think is a spoiler to say because it's very much a book of its time, but that's kind of why I want to read it. This is The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. This is a lesbian classic. As a lesbian, I want to read all the lesbian classics. But I read Jill by Amy Dilwyn last year. It was my favourite book of 2024, and the amazing thing about Jill as a fellow lesbian classic that is so underappreciated is that Jill has a happy ending, and I want to contrast that with something like The Well of Loneliness. By that time, we're getting into an age where the subject material, the suggestion that 2 women could be in love, who could be attracted to each other, is so scandalous. The question of a happy ending is just, it's out of the question. So why something like Morris by Ian Forster again was so radical is that his thesis behind the book was that happy ending was imperative. This is a book that was widely banned for being obscene, and I think it's going to be a super important read, understanding the history of lesbian literature, a part of the canon that cannot be ignored, and I'm hoping to read it soon, so do expect my full thoughts on this coming up. Not necessarily similar, but in the same vein of my quest to read more of the lesbian canon, I got Zammy, A New Spelling of My Name, a biomythography by Audre Lorde. I got this because I had been reading a little bit more about Audre Lorde's life, and I think reading about someone's life often makes me want to go and find out what they were saying in their writing. This is described as a rapturous, life-affirming autobiographical novel by the Black lesbian mother warrior poet. It changed the literary landscape, and this is exactly the kind of book that I'm so excited to read at the moment. And then another theme that keeps cropping up in my reading at the moment is books about mental illness that describe the experience of being mentally ill, written in the past that are considered modern classics and that teach us something, I think, about our psyche through the experiences of the main character. So I read The Faces by Tove, which really got me intrigued in reading more books in a similar vein, and so along those lines, I got The Princess of 72nd Street by Elaine Craft and I Never Promised You a Rose Garden by Joanne Greenberg. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden is a fictionalized autobiography of Joanne Greenberg about the main character's descent from the real world into a fictionalized universe, which is a metaphor for her mental state. And The Princess of 72nd Street sounds very similar, where our main character takes on another persona described as episodes of joyous, reckless unreality during which she becomes Princess Esmeralda, a brightly dressed star ruling over her kingdom of West 72nd Street. I think what I'm really interested in at the moment is reading lots of books along a similar line, books that fit within a theme and being able to compare them depending on the experiences of the author, depending on the time that the author was writing, looking at a much wider conversation within my reading. And with that, what happens is that I'm enjoying each book more and more because I do feel like I am able to compare them, to contrast them, to see how each individual author tackles a theme that is becoming part of the conversation at that time. And it feels very rewarding as a reader to do that too. So that was my classics book haul. Do let me know if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, or if there's any you think I need to immediately get to. I'm so excited to read them all. I don't know how I'm going to find the time to fit them all in, but I do want to read all of them kind of as soon as possible, just because I'm feeling that excitement now that I have bought all of these. And don't forget that if you would like to become an official member of the classics community, that I will leave the links in the description to where you can sign up to the new Substack newsletter, where I'll be regularly posting my classics community updates, as well as still posting here on YouTube, of course. Thank you so much for watching this video and happy reading.